Scientists have been making amazing DNA and soft tissue discoveries that should completely alter how we view the ancient history of our Earth, Michael Snyder reports. If new discoveries completely disprove old theories, shouldn't those old theories be discarded? Well, of course. Just like, for example, the Earth was the center of the world, that has been discarded now. We have the sun in the center of our solar system. Now, for decades, scientists have been assuring us that many of the fossils that have been digging up are extremely old. In some cases, those fossils are supposed to be tens of millions of years old. And in other cases, they're supposed to be hundreds of millions of years old. But in recent years, new discoveries have thrown that entire paradigm into question. For example, scientists that examined the fossilized shell of a sea turtle that was discovered in Panama found something surprising and perhaps impossible. A team of paleontologists studying the fossilized shell of a sea turtle from the Miocene epoch found something surprising and perhaps impossible: preserved bone cells that they believe may contain ancient DNA, the molecule that holds the genetic information of living things. And an ancient turtle shell found on Panama's Pina Beach, northwest of Panama City, the team identified osteocytes or bone cells. They then used a type of stain called DAPI to attempt to label the DNA in the fossilized cell structures. Their findings were published last week in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology. The Miocene epoch was supposed to be between 5 and 23 million years ago. But according to modern science, even under the most optimal conditions, DNA would no longer be readable after approximately 1.5 million years. By comparing the specimens' ages and degrees of DNA degradation, the researchers calculated that DNA has a half-life of 521 years. That means that after 521 years, half of the bonds between nucleotides and in the backbone of the sample would have broken up. After another 521 years, half of the remaining bonds would have gone, and so on. The team predicts that even in a bone at an ideal preservation temperature of -5 degrees Celsius, effectively every bond would be destroyed after a maximum of 6.8 million years. The DNA would cease to be reliable much earlier, perhaps after roughly 1.5 million years, when the remaining strands would be too short to give meaningful information. So, what in the world is going on here? Scientists have also been discovering soft tissue in fossils that are supposedly extremely ancient, and that includes dinosaur bones. The following comes from the History Channel. The fossils maidment is referring to where uncovered in Canada a century ago, and eventually ended up in London's Natural History Museum. They include a claw from a carnivorous theropod, possibly Gorgosaurus, a toe bone resembling that of a Triceratops, and several limbs and ankle bones of a duck-billed dinosaur. In order to find fresh, uncontaminated surfaces of the bones to examine, scientists broke tiny pieces off the fragmented fossils. When Sergio Bertazzo, a materials scientist at Imperial and Maidenment's co-lead researcher on the study, looked at the specimens using an electron microscope, he was shocked at what he saw. He said, "One morning I turned on the microscope, increased the magnification, and thought, wait, that looks like blood." Bertazzo told The Guardian, recounting his examination of the theropod claw. After finding what looked like red blood cells in 2 of the fossils, the researchers explored the possibility that the blood might be the result of historical contamination. For example, a curator or collector might have had a cut when they handled the specimen. But when they sliced through one of the red blood cells and saw what looked like a nucleus, they felt confident the blood was not human. Red blood cells of humans, like other mammals, are unusual among vertebrates because they lack a cell nucleus. And that wasn't all. While examining a cross-section of the fossilized rib bone, the researchers spotted bands of fibers. And when tested, the fibers were found to contain the same amino acids that make up collagen, the main structural protein found in skin and other soft tissues. But this is not supposed to happen. There is no possible way that dinosaur bones that are millions upon millions of years old are supposed to contain soft tissues. But they do. In fact, about a decade ago, it was being reported that a fossil bed in China that was being hailed as Jurassic Park contained the greatest dinosaur soft tissue discoveries ever recorded. And according to Daily Mail, nearly complete skeletons had been discovered that even included skin and feathers. Fossils include complete or nearly complete skeletons associated with preserved soft tissue, such as feathers, fur, skin, or even in some of the salamanders, external gills. One is the feathered dinosaur Epidexipteryx. I'm sure I got that wrong, but anyway. Soft tissues have been revealed by the use of ultraviolet light scanners. A fossil of the salamander Cunnerpeton shows not only the preserved skeleton, but also its skin and external gills. If you believe that those specimens really are millions upon millions of years old, how can you explain that? Prior to 1991, scientists believed that it would literally be impossible to dig up dinosaur bones that contain soft tissue. But then Mary Schweitzer, a molecular paleontologist at North Carolina State University, made a discovery that shocked everyone. The following comes from an article in Smithsonian Magazine. In 1991, Schweitzer was trying to study thin slices of bone from a 65-million-year-old T-Rex. She was having a hard time getting the slices to stick to the glass slide, so she sought help from a molecular biologist at the university. The biologist, Gail Callis, happened to take the slides to a veterinary conference where she set up the ancient samples for others to look at. One of the vets went up to Callis and said, "Do you know you have red blood cells in that bone?" Sure enough, under a microscope, it appeared that the bone was filled with red discs. Later, Schweitzer recalls, "I looked at this and I looked at this and I thought, this can't be. Red blood cells don't preserve," she said. Schweitzer showed the slide to Horner. When she first found the red blood cells looking structures, I said, "Yep, that's what they look like," her mentor recalls. He thought it was possible they were red blood cells, but he gave her some advice. He says, "Now see if you can find some evidence to show that that's not what they are." What she found instead was evidence of heme in the bones, that is, blood in the bones, additional support for the idea that there were red blood cells. Heme is a part of hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in the blood and gives red blood cells their color. "It got me real curious," she says, "as to the exceptional preservation." When Schweitzer made her discovery public, she was viciously assaulted by other scientists who insisted that finding soft tissues in a T-Rex fossil that was millions of years old was absolutely impossible. And they were right. It would be impossible to find soft tissue in a dinosaur bone that is 65 million years old. So obviously the specimen that Schweitzer was examining was a whole lot younger. Since 1991, there have been more than 100 similar soft tissue discoveries. All this to say, soft tissues have been found in dinosaurs or dinosaur era, according to the evolutionary timeline, creatures, now well over 100 times. These have been found in many different types of organisms, ranging from dinosaurs to mammals, birds, plants, reptiles, amphibians, clams, insects, and other arthropods, sponges, and worm fossils. Not only that, but they have also been found all over the world, from China to Mongolia to Russia, Madagascar, Europe, the UK, and all over North and South America, which means they have been exposed to a wide variety of environmental conditions, cold, hot, wet, and dry. And even further, they've been found throughout the fossil record from the Cambrian to the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. And they've been found at all different levels, the oldest being a marine worm claimed to be 551 million years old. All over the world, soft tissues are being found in dinosaur fossils. If those fossils are thousands of years old, that would be possible, but it should not be possible if they are millions of years old. And when we carbon date dinosaur bones, those bones tell us the exact same thing. There should be absolutely no measurable radioactive carbon remaining in anything that has been dead for more than 100,000 years. So in theory, it should be absolutely impossible for us to find measurable radioactive carbon in dinosaur bones. But this is precisely what we find. Here's one prominent example. In June of 1990, Hugh Miller submitted 2 dinosaur bone fragments to the Department of Geoscience at the University in Tucson, Arizona, for carbon-14 analysis. One fragment was from an unidentified dinosaur, the other was from an Allosaurus excavated by James Hall near Grand Junction, Colorado in 1989. Miller submitted the samples without disclosing the identity of the bones. Had the scientists known the samples actually were from dinosaurs, they would not have bothered dating them, since it is assumed dinosaurs lived millions of years ago outside the limits of radiocarbon dating. Interestingly, the C14 analysis indicate that the bones were from 10,000 to 16,000 years old, a far cry from their alleged 60 million year old age. So what happened? Were there dinosaurs around the Younger Dryas period? The last ice age? Now others have, that's my comment. Now others have conducted similar tests, and those tests have produced similar results. Real Science Radio interviewed a scientist returning from the American Geophysical Union's conference in Singapore, where his international team presented results from 5 respected laboratories documenting significant quantities of carbon-14 in bones from 10 dinosaurs excavated from Alaska, Europe, Texas, Montana, and China's Gobi Desert. So much of what we have been taught about the ancient history of our planet has been proven to be rubbish, but new evidence has by the new evidence that has emerged. But in schools all over the globe, our young people continue to be indoctrinated with the old theories, and it's absolutely infuriating. If you do not understand the past, you are not going to understand what's coming in the future. The history of our planet does not stretch back for millions upon millions of years, it appears. In reality, our history is far shorter and far stranger than most of us ever imagined, but most people will never know the truth because it's being purportedly hidden from them. And this is by Michael Snyder. He says about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled Chaos is now available in paperback for Kindle on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 7 other books available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, The Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing. And one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I have also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the Most Important News, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is by Michael Snyder on End of the American Dream. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.